Years ago, Dr. U.D. Register joined the staff at Loma Linda University. He ended up heading up our nutrition department. He's a scientist who was one of those who discovered vitamin B12 in 1948. Now, he read from the book Minister of Healing, written by Ellen White. On page 334, this little statement. Years ago, it was said, many who would not be guilty of placing on their table wine or liquor of any kind will load their table with food, which creates such a thirst for strong drink that to resist temptation is almost impossible. Wrong habits of eating and drinking destroy the health and prepare the way of drunkenness. Now he looked at that and he said, look, I've never seen any study done on this. Let's look at it and see. Let's do a study. So he said, is this really true? What's the evidence there for this? So here's what he did. He took some foods and made a junk food diet. The rats, and fed them to rats. Rats were fed either a good milk and vegetable diet or a poor diet nutritionally. That is commonly used by teenagers. Then the animals were offered a choice of either water or alcohol, and the results were noted. Now here's the junk food that he said was the poor teenage diet of the day. For breakfast, donuts and coffee. 10 a.m., sweet rolls and coffee. For lunch, hot dogs with mustard and pickle-rellies. Soft drink, apple pie, coffee. 3 p.m., sweet rolls and coffee. Dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, French bread, green beans, tossed salad, chocolate cake, and coffee. Evening snack, 3 filled cookies, candy bar, and coffee. These were all blended up with water and then dried out, and this was the junk food diet that was given to the rats. Now, when they gave the rats a good diet, milk, vegetable diet, they didn't drink alcohol. Every rat knows not to drink alcohol. Humans haven't learned that yet, but every rat knows that. So they did this 12-week study, and the rats fed the good diet, milk plus vegetables, didn't drink any alcohol. Now, the height of the line represents the amount of alcohol used. They didn't use any. Now, let's look at the next slide. The next slide shows, that's the red line. When they were given that junk, poor teenager diet, they start off drinking alcohol, and at the 7th week took off and became real alcoholic rats. Now let's look at the next slide. If they took those alcoholic rats who did drink a lot of alcohol and then put them on a good diet, they drank water and not alcohol. Okay? So if they didn't have anything but the good diet, they drank only water. If they have this poor junk food diet, they started right off drinking some alcohol, and at the 7th week took off and became real alcoholic rats. Then when they were put on a good diet, they drank water and not alcohol. Now let's look at the next slide. Another investigator carried this one step further. The formerly alcoholic rats that were now on a good diet and drinking only water were paired and mated. The progeny of these formerly alcohol rats tended to like alcohol. So that's kind of exciting. It's now been discovered what is happening to the chemistry of the body. Phenylalanine makes up about 6% of our amino acids we get. It's an essential amino acid. It can be converted to tyrosine. Okay? Tyrosine can be used to make dopamine. And dopamine is used to make tetrahydropapaverolene, found in the poppy plant. intermediate in the synthesis of opium. When we radioactive tagged that, 50% of it, the radioactive tagged carbon-14, appeared in the urine as morphine, codeine, or its precursors. Now let's go look at that a little further. Relationship between diet alcohol and morphine. The tyrosine goes to make dopamine. It forms 3,4-dihydroxyphenylacetaldehyde, which is toxic. So the body quickly converts that to the acid form. But if the rats drank alcohol, it blocked that from occurring. And it pushes it in the direction of making the morphine and the codeine. Okay? Now the next slide. Here we have the phenylalanine going to make the tyrosine, goes to make dopamine, and because of the alcohol, it can't make the acid form, the non-toxic form. It takes the 3,4-dihydroxyphenylacetaldehyde, and it can, by another mechanism, avoid going to making dope, opium, morphine. If it has lots of nutrients, it can make the basic building block of the body biochemically, acetyl coenzyme A. But you need lots of thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, pyridoxine, magnesium, pantothenic acid. You need these. But in this junk food diet, you didn't get enough of those. And so that tends to make you develop the tetrahydropropyroline and develop the morphine and the codeine in the urine. So, the next slide. I think this shows kind of the same thing. Let's go on to the next slide after that. When these alcoholic rats are injected with morphine, they no longer drink alcohol, but drink water instead. They are already getting what their body craves, have no need to drink alcohol in order to get the morphine their body desires. Okay? For the first time, scientists have found a relationship between a poor diet, alcohol, and hardline drugs like morphine and codeine. In animal studies, this has been demonstrated. It has not yet been demonstrated in humans from those studies way back there in 1960, but it appears likely that this is also happening in a similar manner with humans. But Dr. Register did these studies and published them early in the 1960s and 70s, okay? Now, since then, there have been hundreds of studies done, hundreds of articles done on opiate production by a junk food diet. It has been shown after reviewing 100 articles that humans produce opiates as a derivative of the digestion of excess sugars and fats. There is good evidence that some obese binge eaters experience physical craving due to their body's opiate production, which is primarily physiologically based rather than psychologically, socially, or environmentally based, the scientists tell us. The next slide shows about opiate antagonisms. There are things that antagonize this opiate, keep it from doing damage. Opiate antagonists are Contrave, contains naltrexone and bupropion, naloxone, a medicine that rapidly reverses an opiate overdose, and naltrexone, a synthetic drug similar to morphine, which blocks opiate receptor and is used in heroin addiction and also to help alcoholics. Now, these studies of Dr. Register's done years ago have been proven later by further studies. In his studies, a junk food diet increased the consumption of alcohol and opiate production. Coffee increased the production of opiates in the body. Coffee increased the rat's alcohol consumption. Spicy foods increased alcohol consumption and opiate production. Sweets increased both of these substances also. Now, more recent studies have shown some interesting things. Coffee increases dopamine production about 250%. The dopamine is produced in the brain. Rats in acute opiate withdrawal have increased cravings for sweets. Sweets have analgesic effect because of the increased production of opiates. With naloxone and opiate antagonist, weight gain decreases as the desire of the sweet food is decreased. So that is really good. Dr. Register, the one who discovered vitamin B12 in 1948, he's the one who did these studies early on, 1960s, 1970s, and found out that was true in animals. Now we're finding out it is also true in human beings. Now let's look at this last slide, which gives you a comparison of dietary fats, which shows us which fats are the most important. Now, the Heart Association has said we should keep our saturated fat down to 5 to 6% of the calories. Now, that's pretty low. That's practically a vegetarian diet. Now, the red markers here on this chart show you how much saturated fat there is in a particular fat. Coconut oil has the most. 91% of coconut oil is saturated fat. So in the South Pacific Islanders, where people use coconut oil, in the islands where they use more coconuts, there's more heart attacks. Take the island of Fiji. A lot of overweight people there, don't exercise much. Do they use coconut oil? Yes, a lot of it. And they have lots of diabetes, lots of heart attacks, and that sort of thing. Now, butter, the Heart Association years ago said we should not use. Ellen White told Seventh-day Adventists they should not use butter, okay? Palm oil should not be used. That's used overseas, grown in Malaysia. We don't usually grow it here, but it's shipped in here, and we use it in our foods. If you look at labels, you will see it on the labels. Lard, beef fat, high in saturated fat. Cottonseed oil we should not use as an edible oil, even though it's grown in this country, okay? But above that, there's a lot less saturated fat. So the Heart Association says these are okay to use, but limit those high in saturated fat, which is the coconut oil, animal fats that we need to cut down on the butter, milk fat. So even with milk, the Heart Association says don't use any milk more than with 1% saturated fat. Now, from there on up, peanut oil, Chinese like to cook with peanut oil. That's fine, we'll allow that. From there on up, there's less saturated fat. The one with the least is canola, only 7% saturated fat. So if I didn't know anything about oils, I would use the canola oil. It's a good one. But all these oils have some benefit. The one with the proper ratio, the best ratio, is the soybean oil. Olive oil is good because it's high in oleic acid, which helps to lower blood cholesterol. In fact, the Heart Association says that with the essential fatty acid, linoleic acid, which is this blue one, that we should get 5 to 10% of our fatty acids from that source because it's so good at keeping blood cholesterol down. The green is nuts, is also good. It's alpha-linolenic, omega-3 fatty acid. But there's very few foods that have it much in it. Flaxseed has a lot. Chia seed has a lot. So those are good. But if I didn't know anything about fats at all, I'd probably pick canola oil. But if I want the best ratio to avoid problems with it, soybean oil probably is the best. But all these foods are good. Corn oil is good because of the sterols in it. It has the sterols which competes with cholesterol for absorption. So anything, peanut oil and above, we'd consider good oils. But we need to get adequate amounts of the blue and the green. That's the linoleic omega-6 fatty acid, and the green one, alpha-linolenic acid, the omega-3 fatty acid. Those are good fatty acids that we should have. Now, there's been a breakthrough in the knowledge on heart disease prevention. We have learned that if you get only 5 to 6% of your calories from saturated fat, that you can lower your risk of heart attack and stroke by 80%. It will lower your risk of diabetes by 88%. There's no other medicine or medical method whereby we can do that well. So they're trying to recommend these particular fatty acids and cut down on the saturated fat. But our heart attack rate drops nicely. It dropped down to 1/3 of what it was because of our stopping smoking. Right now, about 9% of the population adult population still smokes. Maybe California, it's less, maybe 7%. So we need to cut down on smoking. And other than that, why is it we're still having so many heart attacks? We're having so many because of 3 different things. We're not getting enough fiber, is one thing. We have too much hypertension is another thing. And suddenly there's been a jump in the diabetes rate. Okay? Now the women who are put on statin medicines to control their blood cholesterol level have a problem, but it increases their diabetes rate by about 71%. So there's some question about whether women should be put on statins at all. There were 3 studies done on women alone, which showed that in 2 of them, there was an increase in heart attack mortality with those that got more saturated fat. So some question whether statins should be used for women at all. But the major breakthrough in the heart disease prevention is the thing that is important to know, is you got to cut down on your saturated fat. And the recommendation by the Heart Association is 5 to 6% of the saturated fat is what it should be cut down to. Now, here's what some of the outstanding statements are in the scientific literature. Here's one in the New European Society of Cardiology, emphasized primary prevention. They said, we know that 80% of all myocardial infarction could be prevented with simple lifestyle measures. No other thing can do that good. And let's look at this statement in the American Heart Association Journal, New Guidelines on Primary Stroke Prevention, December 7, 2010. What remains first among strategies for primary stroke prevention is modification of lifestyle factors. They are associated with about 80% lower risk of first stroke. There is virtually nothing we can do with medicine or interventions of any kind that's going to have that kind of impact. And the risk of type 2 diabetes, by the way, is lowered by 88% by these same health behaviors, according to the Circulation Journal 2010, volume 121, pages 586. The lifestyle factors that we're talking about that are so good at lowering your heart attack risk are not tobacco use, alcohol use, inactivity, lack of exercise, overweight, lack of fruits and vegetables. Used to say too much meat, but have changed it to make it positive, plus elevated blood pressure, elevated serum cholesterol. Cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes, etc., in the U.S. is killing more than the next 5 leading causes of death combined. And those simple lifestyle factors can prevent much of it better than any medicine or other medical interventions. We are now even talking about primordial prevention, which means to prevent the primary risk factors from occurring in the first place. The major problem is that only 3% of the population in the U.S. lives that way. But we should be attempting to increase this to 20% of the population. In the year 2015, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, together, their government agencies, employed a number of scientists to tell us what is the optimum diet. And scientists said we should tell the people the optimum diet is a vegetarian diet. But the heads of those two departments said that's going too far. They said the vegetarian diet plus lean meats is good. In the U.S. in 1964, the Surgeon General said we should not use tobacco. Yes, and then there's a doctor, Max Griswold, at the University of Washington in Seattle. He did a study in 195 countries trying to figure out how much alcohol is safe to use. He's a social drinker himself. He uses a little alcohol. But in these countries, found that the absolute amount of alcohol that is safe to use is 0. You can't use any. We used to say 1 drink a day for women, 2 for men, probably safe. No longer, because of Max Griswold's studies of 195 countries, we're now saying actually no alcohol should be used. Exercise is extremely important. For every hour you exercise, you live 3 hours longer. Now, a woman who's obese, she's obese, but she exercises daily, will outlive the normal weight woman who doesn't exercise at all. A man who smokes, he has hypertension, high serum cholesterol, but exercises every day, will outlive the man who has none of these problems but doesn't exercise at all. Excess exercise lessens life expectancy also. So too much is bad. We don't know how much too much is, but we think running more than 5 miles a day or walking more than 10 miles a day every day may be too much. With more motorized transportation in use, exercise has decreased. Now, I was in Madagascar, and I spoke to the people there, about 50,000 at one time, in an outdoor stadium. And there, they don't exercise enough. 1 in 4, they say, does not meet the acceptable standards for adequate exercise, which is 150 minutes a week or 30 minutes daily. Overweight and obesity was the next lifestyle risk that we need to avoid. 5 to 10% only of the Madagascar population are overweight. They're pretty good on that. There is new scientific information that not eating after 2 p.m., intermittent fasting it's called, but skipping supper is a good program to reduce his weight, help with sleep apnea, and maintain proper metabolic cycles. The American Heart Association is now discovering also that too much sugar can increase the risk of heart attacks. So they're saying we should have less sugar in the diet. Animal studies have shown that adequate linoleic acid in the diet with no amount of salt is going to cause any problem with the hypertension. With adequate potassium, salt will not cause any problem. In the U.S., we're saying we should have twice as much potassium as sodium in the diet. But in the U.S., it's just the opposite with about twice as much sodium as potassium. The potassium comes from the fruits and vegetables. Meat produces about 25% of the salt in our diet. Animal protein tends to elevate blood pressure, while plant protein tends to lower it. With only 12 grams per day of fiber versus 24 grams, there's a 50% higher risk of hypertension. Now, we all need some fat in our diet. So we need the essential fatty acids, the omega-3, the omega-6, linoleic, alpha-linolenic acid. We need these. We also need the eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and DHA. These are long-chain fatty acids that are needed for the development of infant brains and retinas. This supposedly comes mainly from fish, but Gary Fraser found in studies on Adventists that total vegetarians had more than the general population did. Where's it coming from? We don't really know. When the fat content in the diet is lowered from 42% to 22%, or from 20% to 10%, many of the low-density lipoprotein particles change to the more dangerous small, dense type, which increases heart attack risk by 7-fold. So we think we need to lower our saturated fat in general. And this chart should give you an idea of what that should be. When dairy fat is replaced with meat fat, cardiovascular disease increased by 6%. But if replaced with linoleic acid, is reduced by 25%, and with only 0.3% of calories as alpha-linolenic acid, cardiovascular disease is reduced by 14%. So, since smoking has stopped, we've lowered our heart disease death rate quite a bit. But we need to do something to get more fiber in the diet, and we need to do something to lower our blood pressure. The animal protein tends to raise blood pressure. The plant protein tends to lower it. We need more potassium in our diet. So those are things we need to do to continue to lower our cardiovascular disease death rate. Thank you.